All right. Okay. So today we are interviewing. This is actually my first interview. Is this my first interview? I think this is my first interview I've had. So Courtney, you're my first interviewee that I've ever had. So
Yeah, it's my first interviewee too.
yeah. So let's see how it goes. Hopefully we don't mess it up too much.
I mean, there's
I'm-
editing software anyway, so you can cut out
yeah,
the
yeah,
bad parts.
yeah. But no, in general, it's just a friendly conversation. So I'm just going to tell people watching how you and I know each other. So, in fact, actually, do you want to give it a shot? How you and I
Sure.
became friends?
So when I first came to Mount Royal University, I was looking for some courses that might help me as electives that weren't my core courses. And so when I was going through all the gen eds and the electives, came across something called UGST, um, effective learning strategies. And I thought, boom, that sounds like something I should take because it's been a few years since I've been in school and I really want to set myself up for success. So this is something that I should take. Lucky enough, I got a lean, and first few classes was pretty fun, and they really knew what you're talking about for a lot of the content. I was really like, this is going to be useful. This is going to be helpful. I'm going to be able to apply this to life. So we usually just kind of chat after class if I have questions because I'm a keener. I always put my hand up. I always want to answer questions. And then we just start chatting after class. And yeah.
Yeah. So, and from my perspective, it was great to have you because every so often there's students that really kind of are driven and motivated to succeed, and I think it was the fact that you sat in the first row, which kind of really,
Yeah, you got to sit in front, first of all, to see the board and to not have distractions from people like in front of me.
yeah, exactly. And I actually learned to do that the hard way, and it was in my third year of university that I realized the value of sitting in the front row.
Hmm.
I thought what we do is we just kind of go through a couple questions together. And so, again, this is really for students who, are working hard and maybe thinking that they're not intelligent or not smart or, they just don't have what it takes to be successful. So what we'll do here, Courtney, is we'll go through these questions and we'll try to flush out some things that maybe we could share with the audience in terms of how we can help them. Okay, so
Yeah.
so one of the questions I wanted to know was that, um, you know, obviously I graded your work, and I think you took a couple of classes with me, and I graded your work, and I noticed that you did quite well at school, and but it wasn't also like I also know that you had challenges as well. So a lot of times students they have these challenges and they still don't always do well at school. So what was the thing that you think helped you to do well in school, even though um, you had these challenges? Like how did you circumvent this? Like how did you do this?
Yeah, so I didn't really realize until after the fact what was attributing to how well I was doing, because in high school I didn't do well. I was maybe a 60s average. Like I was lucky if I passed a couple classes and graduated. So that was a huge accomplishment to begin with. And I never thought I was going to make it to university. I didn't think that I was smart enough. I didn't have the grades to be able to make it. Maybe I could go to college or like continuing education, but I didn't think I would actually get to university because that's like a big thing. So I worked between high school, after high school, I got a few jobs and I started working, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I moved around a lot. And um, when I finally upgraded and decided to come back to university, the main thing I think that helped was being able to apply a work ethic to school instead of just like um, I don't know, the dynamic between like elementary, junior high, and high school. Being forced to be there, you don't get to choose to be there. You kind of have to take what you take, and you don't pay any money for it, so you're not really connected to it in any way. And the most important thing at the time is like your social life and like growing up and finding out who you are. And like no one's worried about grades at that point. I mean, some people are, but not for me. And so when I had started working, I went through training, and you kind of learn on the job for a lot of jobs. And so once you get the hang of it, you feel really confident about what you're doing and you get to help people. So when I started taking classes, I really thought like, I need to apply a work ethic to this. This has to be my job now because I'm paying for it. First of all, there's a lot of money involved. I'm not getting paid to be here. And I'm going to, I've been told by a lot of people who are older than me, and I take their advice seriously because they've been through this already, that, you know, the certain things that you should do in school so that you can succeed. And so I really listened to those advices and tried to do them, even though I didn't understand why yet.
Yeah. So one of the things that you said, which I think really stood out, was that you looked at school like it's a job now, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a completely different shift that you had in high
It's a
school.
huge mind shift. Yeah. Because you wouldn't get that unless you had to work, right?
Mm,
So I think that's really important to have that going to school or
yeah.
in continuing school.
I think, would you say that one of the key components, and by the way, when I'm looking left, I'm still looking at you, just
Oh
like,
yeah.
I have two
Two
monitors, I'm not
screens.
ignoring you.
Yeah, and my
Uh,
cats are over there, so
yeah. Um, so would you say that one of the biggest challenges that students have is that um, when they come from high school to university, they just don't make that shift in their mind?
yeah, and um I think that a lot of kids are lucky to have some sort of financial uh, guide to help them into university as well. Like a lot of, at least I hope to do this for my kids as well, like have an education fund. I want my kids to be able to go to school and have that opportunity. And I think as a young adult, as a young person, you can't grasp that concept of value quite yet. So even if it, like, whether it's your own money that you made throughout the summer and you worked for it, it's still not as drastic as if you were to had, if you had faced certain challenges like having to live on your own at an early age, or moving from a different country or a different province, and having to figure out life and finances and education all at the same time is kind of hectic too. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think that if you don't have to worry about that kind of thing, then you kind
You
of
know,
get trailed off and you're still in high school mode, and you slack off, and then you realize real quick, first of all, in the face, what's going on.
yeah. So what I've seen consistently is that individuals who have had challenges or have at least in their mind experienced discomfort or um, things aren't going well, I found that those are the individuals that actually make the highest and the quickest change. So
Yeah.
and 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 I know for a fact that you and I used to talk about some of the things that you went through, and I know you had some challenges as well. Um, so it's interesting how that works, right? Because people who never had those challenges and people who never had those setbacks, or not even that, but if they never even thought of potential challenges that
Hmm.
can happen, they usually don't do as well, right? But the ones that actually have the experiences and they've suffered through a lot of situations, they've not been able to achieve the things that they wanted to, and they're now they're frustrated and they're angry and they're upset. When they get an opportunity, it's like magic, right? They start to
Yeah.
perform better.
And I think that kind of goes with a metaphor of you gotta, walk before you run. And so a lot of um, people who start walking and running and they fall early on, they're gonna appreciate that run and work harder for the rest of the marathon versus someone who's like, just being able to jog all the way to the end and then starts to have problems because I think this applies to a lot of aspects in life too, where
Yeah,
if you have experiences early on, it kind of sets you up. It's like a whole learning curve in itself. So it's like, when do you hit that learning curve? When do you hit that obstacle? Like, is it before and it preps you for uni, or is it in uni and it, causes a lot more um, consequences in a sense because there's more at stake once you're at this stage. So yeah, whether it's a hardship or like even just experiences
yeah,
can really help just change the mindset, or having a friend or a family member that went through something and learning from their mistakes, not even your own,
yeah.
could be
What I
helpful.
found what I found is that consistently those individuals who've been in the workforce and they come back to school, they're at a different level.
So
They,
much better.
yeah,
Yeah.
they just do exceptionally well. And I asked them, I said, so what was the reason? And they're like, if this is what my life is going to be, I need to get an education and improve my life. So
Yeah.
they've
You
had
gotta
a
do it
taste.
well.
Yeah, they've had a taste of what it's like to have an ugly life, and
That's
then
true too.
right,
You get stuck in retail for 2 years and you're like, what is this?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So then when they come back to school, it's like they're just like sponges. They're just wanting to do
Yeah.
everything, and it's a very consistent thing that I've seen over and over. So
Fear
um,
drives humans. So if you're afraid of something, like ending up some way, or, you know, how you're talking about um, in courses sometimes when you have to imagine the worst case scenario so that you have motivation to move in the other direction. It's kind of
Yeah,
like that too.
yeah. And sometimes
Yeah.
if you've never had a worst case scenario,
You don't know what, yeah.
you never know where you could be headed if you don't fix it soon, right? And I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people, what they do is they're in this level of comfort, and they want better results, but they're comfortable enough not to really do anything about it. So
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Yeah. I
Um,
agree.
so I had another question for you. So there's a lot of students out there that actually study and work hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that you were the kind of student that pretty much got A's, even though you never did in high school, right? So now you're in
Yeah.
university, you're getting A's, plus you're working, plus you had some roommate stuff that you had to deal with, plus you had
Yeah.
challenges, at home, plus you had finances to deal with, and so you had all these factors going on, and you were still able to get A's. I just want to know, like, you had every excuse not to get an A. How did you
Mm-hmm.
how did you do it? Because you had every reason not to get an A. You could have blamed your circumstances, you could have blamed your friends, you could have blamed the prof, you could have blamed whatever, but
I wonder that myself a lot. How did I do this?
yeah.
um, Honestly, from a young age, I've kind of stumbled through a lot of stuff, and I think I've had that experience enough to realize that um, if something's not working, something needs to change. So before I didn't care. Like in high school, I'm not doing great. It's whatever. I had a whole bunch of other stuff going on that was of a priority in my adolescent mind. But um, when I get to a point where I'm like, hey, this isn't working, or like, I'm struggling with this, I'm working way too hard, I just kind of realized that there must be an easier way. Um, I'm blessed to have a critical thinking mind, and I usually come up with inventions or ideas or thoughts or some way to make this a little bit easier. This has got to be easier somehow. And so um, I've always been pretty good at seeking out my resources and finding help when I need it. I
Mm,
haven't always been good at everything or anything. So bit by bit, once I've realized that, hey, I got help for this and now I'm good with it. Like I learned how to do this and now I can apply it to other places in life. Um, so I think working hard doesn't necessarily mean that you're working hard at something that's going to grow you. You might just be stuck in a rut and be doing the same thing over and over and over again. You're not going to get any further by doing the same thing. You have to change it or alter it or take a different viewpoint on it to be able to progress. So I like your sports analogy when if you want to get really good at basketball, you're not going to practice dodgeball. Like it's not the same kind of skill set. Even though you try really hard, you're not going to get the results you need because it's in a different field, it's in a different realm.
yeah.
So
And
I
I think
really resonate with that.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that people say is that, since I was a kid, work hard and you'll be successful. But
Yeah.
the thing is that when people say that, I think they're missing part of the equation.
Yeah, it's like half a sentence.
Yeah, it's like saying 2 equals 4, right? And you're like, well, it doesn't, because you need to add another 2 in there, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So so we talked about something today in class, and we talked about the power of your mindset. And you said, you ask yourself, there's got to be a better way, there's got to be an easier way, right? And do you do you do you believe that when you start asking yourself the right questions? So let me ask you, actually, let's take a step back. When you were in high school and you were not succeeding, were you asking yourself those type of questions? And number two, what happens when you start to understand that everything starts with your mind first? Like, what did you notice?
So for the first part, you said, like, how did I, can you repeat the first part? How did I
So,
know?
and I forgot the first part. No, the
Oh
first
no.
part. The first part was that in high school, when you were struggling,
Oh yeah. Did I ask myself the right questions?
yeah, I'm guessing.
Um,
I'm guessing you didn't. But what were you
yes.
thinking when you had a challenge in high school?
I don't think I was asking myself the right questions, but at the same time, I knew I wasn't doing good because I wasn't trying. Like I wasn't in it. I didn't have interest. Like there was one class, like biology, for example, and art. I excelled at art and drama class. Like in junior high, I always had really high grades in those classes because I was interested in them. I had fun in them. I really liked them. Biology, luckily, was really fun for me. I had a really great teacher in high school, and I paid attention. I liked to be there. I was happy when I was at that class. So I did well in those because I held interest. Whereas most other classes, I didn't care anything about. I didn't want anything to do with them. And so I didn't pay attention, and I was distracted. And I had so much else going on in my life that I just could not be bothered. Whoops. You're still there. Okay.
Yeah,
My
you're back.
battery's dying, I think.
Can you just plug it in?
I
Do you
just
want to?
I couldn't be bothered to like focus on it enough to like be good at it. I didn't care that I was doing bad. I was like, as long as I graduate, it's fine. Or as long as I pass, it's fine. Like, it doesn't matter if I do good. But
So
yeah, I
what
might plug
happened?
my phone in.
Yeah, go
Sorry.
ahead. So here, I'll just wait till you come back.
All right, where were we?
So, well, now you're in slow motion. So now we got a Wi-Fi issue.
Oh.
It'll buffer. Okay, you're back
Is
now.
it fine now? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
So,
good.
so I guess the question that I had for you is that, what are some of the new ways of thinking did you have? Like, so now you're in university, and now you're getting better results. So what I'm really trying to ask you is, what are some of the new ways of thinking that you've adopted from high school to university?
It's hard to remember exactly the way I thought like 10 years ago, but I'm assuming that I was really distracted and emotional, and I couldn't pay attention to a lot of things. And I didn't care. Like, I didn't care about this. I didn't care about that. I don't care about my parents. I don't care about whatever.
Mm,
And now, as an adult or young adult in university, I have a whole different perspective on like what matters, like what is important to me, um, what I want my life to look like, and what it means to get there. So even though things might suck or things might be hard or I have to do extra work here and there to make something happen, um, it's like a short-term discomfort for a long-term achievement.
yeah, nicely
So
said.
I'm always pushing myself through those kinds of things.
Yeah. So you're always thinking long term, right? You're like, I'll just
Yeah,
handle it. I'll just deal with the stuff right now, but in the long run, I'm going to be better.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I've been surviving off this quote for a really long time, and not so much anymore, but for a long time I was like, you know, if it's not okay, or no, it's going to be okay. If not today, eventually.
Mm,
So as long as you keep like pushing through and like working on whatever you're working on, um, it'll eventually be better. It'll eventually be okay. Like, you're not stuck here. So
yeah.
I just always was trying to grab onto new vehicles and try to keep going forward because
And have you noticed
yeah,
that? Have you noticed that when you keep trying and you just don't give up and you just keep going, you all of a sudden also become very lucky?
yeah,
Have you
yeah,
noticed
things
that?
just fall into your lap. It's like the universe is like, oh, here you go. But
Yeah.
I've realized that like I can't decide, or I can't tell if it's like these opportunities just come to me. Like, is this some kind of weird like universe energy thing that's happening? Like, I'm getting what I'm receiving, but also it's like you're you're gonna be able to see things clearly when you're not like so tunnel vision. So if your mind is closed off and you're struggling and you're focused on one thing, even if opportunities and messages are coming at you, you're not going to see them, or you're not going to notice them. So it seems like they're not there and that only bad things are
Mm,
happening.
yeah.
But when you change your mindset, when you look at it a different way and you're like, you're open and receptive to these open doors and opportunities, then they seem to be coming at you all the time because you're seeing them.
Yeah. And to
They're
see them, you
presenting
got to start
themselves.
thinking differently.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's a perception thing.
Yeah. Because they were probably always already there, but maybe you just never saw them before. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's another question.
Okay.
So there's a bunch of students and they're struggling academically. And if you could tell them one sentence or a couple of sentences, what would you tell them? They're like, university's hard. I can't do it. It's too difficult for me. What would you say to them?
I would say learn how to learn. And I know that you preach this a lot because this is probably the number one thing that helped me the most is once I realized that humans have different learning styles, like your brains are wired differently. There's not one cookie cutter way to teach someone something, and there's not one way to learn something. That's when I realized that, oh, it's not that I'm stupid or that I can't grasp this, like I'm not intelligent enough to get this. It's just that either the teaching slash learning style isn't matching up. And so when you have, things that you can control are the way that you learn and the way that you study. And so even if you have a prof here and there that doesn't match your teaching, like the teaching style doesn't match, you can still find a way to get that information without working too hard and stressing too hard,
Mm.
because you know how your brain retains information, and that is vital. Like that is the number one thing I would suggest to anyone, is figure out how you learn and retain information.
Yeah, I think that's key. I know when I was in school, I wouldn't remember anything the professor said, and I was like, I must be dumb. Until one day, my dad,
Yeah,
we were talking. Do you remember that story I mentioned in
the
class?
movie one, do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, say it again.
So I remember I was just so in my class. I'm telling my students because I'm a big James Bond fan, right? So uh, my dad would say, okay, let's watch this movie, and we'd seen this Bond movie like 10 years ago, and I'd be like, well, we've already seen it, and my dad would be like, what do you mean you've seen it? And I'm like, yeah, this is what happens. And I tell him the whole movie. And he's like, only if you could remember movies the way you remembered your schooling, right? Like your academics.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just saying it to have fun with me. But then I actually took it to heart. And that's when I realized maybe I'm just a very visual person. And then I started
Mm-hmm.
processing all the information in a visual way. So there'd be chapters to read, but then I would create flow charts, I'd create diagrams, I'd create like, what else did I put? Images, I'd draw images, and then all of a sudden it's stuck. And then before the
Yeah.
exam, I would just kind of quickly just look at these pictures, and then the pictures would come in my mind when I wrote. And that only happened when I figured out what my learning style was. So I
Yeah.
agree with you. I agree with you. So here's another one for you. So there's a lot of students and professionals who are just, you know, they just don't believe that they can do it, right? They just don't believe they can achieve their goals. And in fact, a lot of times people have told me, "Oh, I'm not going to pick a goal like that because it has to be realistic, right? It has to be something that I know I can do. Otherwise, I'm not going to pick it." So, what would you say to somebody like that, and where they're like, "No, I got to pick like really tiny goals, and then not tiny, but like goals that may not be beyond what they think is possible." Because I think in your life you've achieved some goals that are beyond what you thought were possible.
Yeah, exactly. What I would say to someone who thinks that they're stuck and that, or that they can't achieve certain goals, um, would be to ask them, is that something you know for yourself or something that you've been told by
Mm,
others and by society? Like, is that what you actually think, or is that just what you're conditioned to think? Because I think there's a lot of pressure and there's a lot of people who are afraid of change, so they'll suppress others from changing or tell them, subconsciously, when you get negative feedback, it shapes how you think about yourself. You can't do it. You could pretty much do anything you set your mind to, which is a true fact, which I never used to believe. Um, but really, it's all in your head, because you can change the way you think, and you can change your perception of yourself, and you can have more confidence, and you can achieve those bigger goals. It just might take a few more steps in
yeah,
between.
and 100%. Like the people that tell you that you can't do it, and the people who tell you it's not possible, they actually might mean well for you, but those
Yeah, they're
individuals,
trying to protect you, but that's not where growth comes from.
yeah. And sometimes what happens is those people who tell you you can't, they've probably never achieved anything of great significance, anyways. So when they tell you that they can't, that you can't, they're just giving you what's in their mind,
Projecting.
right?
Yeah.
They're just giving you what's in their mind. But you don't have to adopt that. You can, especially at the age that I teach a lot of students, they're at the age where if they start believing that they can achieve anything, they have like their whole life in front of them.
Yeah.
So I think it's important that you understand that just because somebody says you can't do it or believes you can't do it, I don't think it means that that's true. I think what
No.
that means is that they're sharing their mindset with you.
Yeah.
Right?
100%.
And so you can pick it up or
Because only you can know your own limits, and you can only know your own limits by trying and testing them.
yeah, absolutely. Okay. So just one final question. So you took a course with me, right? The
I
undergraduate
did.
studies. So out of all the stuff that you learned, what's the one thing that you think made the biggest difference?
Um, Besides learning how I learned with those like learning style quizzes and stuff that we did, because that's super important, number one. Another thing I wanted to say that really helped me that I still use is that procrastination killer is starting something even though you might not finish it right now. So just like doing that one thing, like if you have an assignment or if you have a job or whatever it is, just like write it down or open a Word document and title it and save an empty file. Like, I don't know how many times that saved me from like putting it off, because I'll just like, oh, I just got to do one thing. I just got to do one thing. And then so I'll go and do one more thing. But then that 5 minute action turns into more of a flow, because you're like, oh, I guess I have time. And your brain starts working on it, even though you didn't intend to do that.
Mm.
So that has helped me a lot. And then what I wrote down, I know you said one thing, but I have to pick two. The one thing is that learning how to use my outline, like my course outline. I just thought, oh, this is a summary. This is something I can look at to see what the class is about. But really, it gives you so much valuable information about when your tests are, what your tests are about, how much they're worth. And then when you plot them into your calendar, you can see them ahead of time and know and learn how much time it takes you to study for things. And so you're not caught off guard with like a quiz or a test and you're, extra stressed because you forgot it was this week or whatever.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. So yeah, that's it. I'm not going to ask you too many other questions because I know you're busy, but
Well, I mean, busy.
do you have anything that you wanted to share, like just in general about how not just students, but how people in general could sort of achieve their goals faster,
Yeah.
more effectively?
I really think that the sooner the better when it comes to like learning these things, but it's also never too late. Like obviously you wish you knew things younger in your life so that you could accomplish more sooner, but I think everything happens for a reason and everything happens at the right times. That's meant to happen. So if you're struggling out there, or you're thinking that you can't succeed, or you're trying to succeed and can't, just one thing that I would really take to heart is like listen to your elders, respect your elders, people who have been through this thing before. Even though you don't understand what they're saying, just keep it in the back of your mind, because it might come up one day and be like, oh, that person was right. Like, I'm glad I took their advice, because now I'm here and now I understand what it means. And then knowing your resources, like reaching out and knowing when to ask for help, and not to be ashamed of asking for help, because everyone is in the same boat, whether you think you are or not. Everyone has questions, everyone is wondering, they're just like putting on a face to act confident. You can also do that too, act confident and no one will question you, but just know when to ask for help so that you can grow and succeed and learn from others. That's what humans are supposed to do, is learn from each other.
Yeah,
So
and I also think it's important to have fun too. Like
yeah.
having fun is the most underrated thing ever.
Yeah,
You remember in class I was making jokes and we were like laughing and all that
it
kind of
was
stuff.
so much fun.
Yeah,
Everyone was so cheeky, and when it got to the end of the class when we were doing the UGST Olympics, that was a great time. Like that was so much fun. Everyone was competitive but very friendly, and
yeah,
it's
and
a class to remember for sure.
I think one of the key components is that if you're not having fun at anything, you're probably not going to do well at the thing that you're doing. So
Yeah, you got to
whatever,
learn to have fun with it.
yeah, you got to have fun, and I think that's sometimes what's missing. People are so focused on achieving this goal, but they stopped having fun along the way. So if you're not having fun, I think it just becomes harder. So
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
yeah,
I
good,
agree with that.
good. So anyhow, yeah, so we're done, and so
Cool.
I'm going to just pause it right now.